Hi, thanks for joining us on the 21st of May 2020 for Vision Australia's check-in and chat session, plugging into smart home technology. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, if you can't stay for the full session, that's okay because a recording of the webinar can be accessed later via our webpage at visionaustralia.org/check in and chat. Today's webinar on plugging into smart home technology, we'll be giving tips on how you can go about using smart technology. The types of devices that make life easier at home. We'll be looking into Google Home and Alexa, smart TVs such as Samsung and Sony, as well as smart switches and bulbs. Now, if you have any questions today, and I hope you do because we've got a real expert here today, please send them through via the chat box. If you're using a screen reader, you can access the chat function through keystroke Alt H. I'm really excited now to introduce our speaker, our key expert, Jim, who is Vision Australia's Access Technology Service Development Lead and has been with Vision Australia for over 25 years. And he'll be the first to tell you that he's perfect for his job because he loves gadgets and anything new in technology. Jim, it's so lovely to have you on Check In and Chat. How you doing?
Pretty good, and thanks for having me. And
Oh,
hello to all those who are listening.
yeah, we've got a good group today, about 100 people on the line. Stay with us. If you're just joining us, please send us through any questions using the chat function again. I can see people are coming through. Now, Jim, tech is such a great way to make life easier at home. And I think you'll be the first person to tell anyone that because it is the truth. Tell me what Google Home and Alexa can do for our listeners.
Well, they're interesting products. They've only been, in reality, around for a few years, and it's I suppose, the Google Home, and there's a lot of models of the Google Home. But the basic units are you talk to it. It's so simple. You can ask it all sorts of questions. You can virtually end up being the king or queen of trivia if you really want to. It can play any type of music that you want, millions of songs of music. In the database, you can ask it all of those sort of questions. You might be watching a TV program, for instance, and on something in England, and you think, hey, what's the population of England? So you can actually ask the Google device exactly that question. What's the population of England? So you can literally use it as your radio. You can use it as a timer in the kitchen. You can use it for all sorts of things, playing your local radio station, or it could be that you're not originally from Australia and you want to keep up with some radio stations overseas. You can do that too. It's a lot of fun.
It does sound like a lot of fun. So the premise is that you use the device you speak to it, and whether it sounds like an information source as one of the ways that you can use it, like you
Mhm.
just mentioned, using a radio, um, tuning into music and whatnot. I've got a couple of questions that have come through that I'd love to share
Mhm.
with you. We've got one from Jane. Hi, I'm interested in lighting that can be connected to Google Home, so specifically types that dim and can change color. Any advice on that, Jim?
Yep, there's lots of different types you can use. I personally, I've got some of the Philips Hue lighting systems. They're the ones that I tend to use. I've actually got one in the bedroom so that you can. The nice thing is you want to get up in the middle of the night and not wake up your partner, so you can just say, Google, make my lights 10% or 20%, whatever it is. So it's nice and dull. You're not lighting up the MCG in the middle of the night.
Mhm.
Um, and they work really well. The one thing with lighting systems, you can get starter packs, for instance, that have 3 different globes in them and a unit that connects to your Wi-Fi. So everything you do with any of these units, you have to have Wi-Fi at home that you can connect to. So
Yep.
with the lighting systems, basically it comes with a little attachment that runs all of the, it's sort of an interface, I guess you can say, between the Google device and the lights. So you can then name the lights, lounge room, bedroom, wherever, and just tell Google to turn the light on or off. And for someone who's totally blind, I think they're really important because sometimes you don't know when the light's on or off, and you could be wasting electricity when you don't have to. So by being able to tell the light that it's on or off, then that's a really good way to go. And you can also get what they call smart switches. So, for instance, one of the really good examples is the lights on your Christmas tree. You always plug in the lights to some plug behind the Christmas tree, and then turning those lights off at night time is actually kind of awkward. You've got to get behind the tree and find the power point and turn it off. So what you can do is get a smart switch, plug it into the power point, and plug the Christmas lights into that. And you can just tell your Google device, or we haven't spoken about the Amazon Echo devices, which is the opposition. You can tell either of those devices just to switch off the Christmas tree lights. But they could also be lamps. Could be lamps anywhere in the house, and you can use that same switch device to turn the lamps off. That's really handy if you go on holidays, because it doesn't matter where you are. Via your phone, you can switch off those switches or switch them on. So come night time, you switch all the lights on in the house. It looks like somebody's home, and then you can switch them off later on. So the devices are practical as well as fun. You can run all sorts of things with with either the Echo device or your Google Home. It could. Sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, we've mentioned some things that we're going to speak a bit more in detail later on in the segment, but what does come to mind, just the way you were describing how you can, its application even in lights, is how very, very tailored it is for the user. We've got another question, few more questions that have come through, which I'd love to get your advice on for all of our listeners. Michael has asked, is Alexa, which one I guess is a better one, or I guess which one would someone prefer over Google versus Alexa, in your opinion?
It's a really good question, and it's probably a matter of preference. They're very, very similar, and I'll actually show you. What I've got here is just in front of me. There we go. So if you can see the screen, that is the Google Home Mini, and it's basically, I always describe it as a large jam donut.
Oh, your jam donut's talking to you by the sounds of
Yeah,
it.
it just reminded me that my microphone is off. There's a little
Oh.
little switch on it, so I've turned it off.
I love that. So
Yeah.
it really does come down to, so let's just say, so I don't know, I don't have a Google Home or an Alexa. What would be the driving force for me to choose one or the other? Would it be price point? Would it be greater usage for someone that likes music choices? How would you kind of make that buying decision?
Music's exactly the same on both.
Okay.
The one difference between the two is that you can ask the Google device, when's the next train to wherever, and it'll give you that. It'll actually say, because when you first set it up, you tell them what your address is, so that it knows how far away you are from your local train station. And it'll say something like, it's a 13-minute walk to your train station. The next train is at 2:45, and it'll take X amount of minutes to get to your destination. The Amazon, the Echo can't do that at this point. But if that's the only thing that you can't do, it's not so it's not such a big difference at all.
Yeah.
There are different models with all of them. So the little mini, the jam donut, as I call it, that's the basic model. You then go up to a larger model, has a larger speaker, so the sound is a little better. Then you can go up to the large Max device. So it's a bit like a large brick. The really nice thing, and both the Echo and the Google devices have the same type of model. The really nice thing with those ones is that the sound is fantastic. In fact, when you first play a song, the very first time you switch it on, for the first 5 or 10 seconds, they sound really ordinary, the big units, and all of a sudden they go crystal clear. And it's because they're sending a signal around your room to see how big your room is, and then it adjusts the acoustics for it. So they're really clever devices.
So clever.
Mm,
On that, we've actually got a question around sound. I have a feeling I might know the answer to this,
mm,
but I will throw it to you because you are the expert. Mary has asked, what is the quality of the music sound? Is
mm.
there, yeah,
Yep, it depends on the one you get, but even the little mini is quite good. If you're an audiophile and you really like your high end music, well then, the larger devices, the Max device for the Google or the Echo Studio, for the Amazon ones, they're the ones to go for. They're the larger speakers, with a lot of bass. They definitely have the best sound. But even the little mini is pretty good. Yeah, it's not bad at all. I've got both devices around the house, and to me, there's not a lot of difference. Echo devices also have units with, he says, picking up one of the devices. The Echo Show device has, and I'll just throw this against here if we can, there we go. So that's a little black unit, and that one has a 5-inch screen as part of it. So you can actually, with the Echo device, you can actually call somebody else that has another Echo device and talk to them because they've got a built-in camera on the screen. So you can be chatting away to each other and actually seeing each other. And the Echo devices come in a 5-inch, a 8-inch, and a 10-inch screen. So you can get different size screens as well.
yeah. And do you know if we've got Colleen that's asked, who's had some support through Vision Australia in around choosing, I think, large downlights. Can she get globes to respond to Google Mini?
Absolutely.
Oh,
They'll
great.
respond to all of them. It doesn't matter which model it is. They all have the same speech smarts in them. The only difference between them is, apart from the price tag, of course, is the speakers that are in them. So, some speakers are better than others. The bigger the device, the better the speaker.
Yeah, right. Now, Ross has asked a really good question and says that he's been using Google Home for recipes and cooking and has had trouble flipping between ingredients in cooking instructions. So, Jim, can you offer any guidance around this? Also, how do I tell it to close the recipe and go back to the home page?
Um, which device do they have? Is it the Google
Google
device?
Home. Yeah,
Mhm.
Google Home, the
Okay.
donut.
Yep. You just say either stop, say Google stop, or cancel, and
Stop.
so it will just be sitting there waiting for the next instruction. One of the nice thing about the units with the screens on them, when you ask it for a recipe, the recipe is on the screen, and you can actually turn on a screen reading program. So it's a little bit like on your phone, you have VoiceOver. On your computer, you might have JAWS or NVDA. So it has its own built-in screen, so that if the recipe comes up on your screen, you can touch the screen and it'll also read it to you.
Yep.
But the other thing it does, also on both the Google and the Echo device, originally you set them up with a program on your phone. So if you ask it for a recipe, the recipe is automatically sent to your phone. So it's there as well. So you can always keep that recipe.
Mhm. We are getting questions coming through thick and fast, and we will do our best to get through as many as we can today. If there is something that we haven't been able to cover, because I know this is such an important webinar, please give us a call at our Access Technology Help Desk. They can help provide guidance around product choice as well as advice around setup. Give us a call on 1300 84 7466. I'd like us now to move through to smart televisions, including Samsung and Sony. Um, Jim, can you tell me more about these products?
Mm. Um, what used to happen years ago, of course, you change the station and you don't know what the program is until you start listening to it and realise what it is. The really nice thing with the new smart TVs is that it's got built-in speech. So you can turn that speech on, and as you're going through each channel, it'll tell you what the program is. It'll tell you, what time it started, next program. If you press your righto, it'll tell you what the next program is as well. So um, if you want, you can get a synopsis of the program itself. So, I mean, that's really nice. But the smart component of it is where you can play streaming programs from, say, Netflix, for instance. So press a button on your remote, switch to the Netflix, and all of the programming in Netflix will be spoken as well. So press your left and right arrow keys to go through the programs. It'll tell you what it is. No guesswork anymore, and you can then play the program if you want. It's those smart components to it. In the past, literally were only the channels would speak, but now they can speak everything, all the menus. So you can set up the device yourself. The really nice thing with most of the new Sony models and some of the Samsung models is that there's actually a dictation button on the remote control. So you can just press the button and say, go to channel 27 or whatever it is, or open Netflix. So it makes life much, much easier. And in fact, the new models of the TVs has that same component in it like the Google Home does. So you can ask it questions and it'll give you the answers as well.
And all these products that we're talking about, we've got a question from Renita. It's including the products earlier that we discussed. Are these covered by the NDIS?
No, in most cases, you can't actually say no straight out.
Mm.
In the vast majority of cases, the answer is no, because they're considered to be a standard off-the-shelf product. Something that you would normally buy.
Yeah. Yeah.
There have been arguments, and there has been a couple of yeses along the way for a smart TV.
Yeah.
But people had to argue that it was originally rejected.
Thanks for that. I think that's quite some important feedback to our listeners. Now, is when you're looking at buying a Samsung or a Sony, is there anything like quite specific consumers should look out for when they do make that choice?
No, it's a really hard question because there are other TVs that do something similar.
Mm-hmm.
Most TVs have got what they call TV Android as part of their operating system. But it's like most things. Some models are better than others. Some brands are better than others. Sony and Samsung are, to me, probably the most reliable around. It's important, I think, to look for that dictation button on a remote control. Just makes life so much more easier than having to fight through all of the smaller buttons on a remote control.
Yeah.
Once again, people's sight is so different that you really have to go and have a look at the brands to see if you can still see the TV, to see what colours suit you. Some are really bright and vivid, and some of the blacks aren't really black. In a TV. So it really is looking at the TV, looking at where you're going to be sitting, how big a TV you really want. It's fairly awkward to come up with the right TV because it's going to be around for a few years to come in the house before you buy a new one. So you really got to investigate and just make sure that you're happy with the one that you're looking at. Get the person that you're at the store. Get the person to turn on the accessibility, which is really important. And make sure that it's working properly. In fact, a funny story is when I went to buy my TV, I got the guy to turn it on the TV, but what he didn't realise is that every single Samsung TV in that area turned the accessibility on at the same time, so that somebody else
Oh,
came along to use it, and all the other TVs had all the accessibility turned on, all the speech was turned on. They didn't know what it was.
oh wow. That
So
would
we
be
had to,
interesting.
yeah, we had to get them to turn it off.
Yeah. We had to actually Ross, the chap who, oh, sorry, not Ross, the one of the other speakers who asked about NDIS
Mhm.
funding. Ross had made a statement which I thought would be interesting to share with the group, and Ross has said, "I did get NDIS funding to buy Google Home Max, but it was recommended in an occupational therapy report." So does that sound like something that when it comes, there is like a little bit, if a consumer was to look deeper into their NDIS needs and was to advocate for that, do you think that that's why
Mm.
some consumers are able to get it funded?
Yes, absolutely. So that I was referring to the TV when I said that it's hard to get, but even the Google devices aren't automatic. Really, if you, for instance, there's a device that sort of fits in between the Google and your air conditioner. So what that does, that'll run your air conditioner, but without the Google device, it won't work. So
Yeah.
that's where you'd have the argument that I need my Google device to do something specific. Um, and it could be if you're the only one in the home, then yeah, you need your Google device to be able to turn your lights on and off to know whether you're using power or not. So yes, there are definite arguments to be able to get them, but if you just want one for the sake of having one,
Mm.
then the normal argument would be no.
Yep, that makes sense. Now, Janelle's asked a question that came to my mind because I'm new to this world. Janelle's asked, do you need an electrician or someone tech savvy to install and set up the smart lights and PowerPoint and TV?
No.
No.
The short answer is no, because the smart lights are literally just screw into your light bulb, just like you would change any globe. So if you get somebody to change your globes when they die off, then yeah, get that same person to put it in. But no, it's actually quite straightforward. The smart TV just, in some cases, you might need some sighted assistance just to get that Wi-Fi going. Once the Wi-Fi on your TV is going, then your smart TV is connected and ready to go. And the same, with the Google devices. You might need some help to get that set up. Our help desk can help to set up the Google devices,
And
but you don't need an electrician to do it.
that's really good to know. And that it is some, and that an everyday person can set this up. And just to add to what Jim did say, if you did need help, please call the Access Technology Help Desk on 1300 84 74 66. Thank you so much for all the questions that are coming through, and I'm doing my very best to share as many as I can with Jim. Jim, now you might have already mentioned this, and forgive me as I jump between questions and whatnot. The Google Home Talk, is that connected to your smartphone? That comes from Alicia.
Mhm.
Yeah,
The
okay, great.
Yep, the way to set it up in the first place is via an app. Is the Google. There's a particular Google Home app on your phone or your tablet, or if that's what you've got. And yes, you set it up via that. So what you basically do is you tell it where you live. You tell it what the name of the device is, and so because you might have one at work and you might have one at home, or you might have one in a few different rooms of the house. So you have to let it know what the name of that device is. But once you've done that, if you don't add any more devices anymore, then you never have to touch that app again. And possibly the only time you would go back to the app is one of the nice things with both the Echo device and the Google devices. You can say, add sugar to my shopping list or add whatever to my shopping list throughout the week. And that shopping list then is on the phone itself. So when you're at the supermarket, when we can go back to going to the supermarket, then you've got that list, of things that you need to pick up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really the app is secondary once it's all set up.
Got you. Now back with the so with the smart TVs again, like do consumers need to think about getting an antivirus for their products? Can they be
Uh,
hacked?
I guess anything with a Wi-Fi could be technically hacked, but no, there isn't an antivirus for your TV.
Hmm.
But they do have um, a hidden antivirus actually built in, so that there is some technical way that people can't get into the actual TV and mess up your settings.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of the TV repair people these days can look at your TV from from the factory. And just like we can with computers, remote into a computer, they can do the same thing with your TV. So they can go in there, change your settings, check to see what's wrong, that sort of thing.
Yeah. We've got a few questions around price point, Jim. Can you
Mm-hmm.
give the listeners out there an idea of what a ballpoint figure is for the Google Home,
Mm.
Alexa, smart
Yep.
TVs?
Yeah, the little Google Home Mini is around the $50 mark.
Oh,
Recommended retail is $79, but if you're paying $79, you're probably not paying the right price. You can pretty much get them around $50 from JB Hi-Fi and all of those sort of places. But you can, sometimes there's deals. You get two for the price of one, that sort of thing as well. If you go up to the next level, the actual Google Home, not the Mini, you're looking at around 130. You go up to the big Max devices, you're looking at about 350. And then
well,
you've got the they used to be 500, so they've come down a fair bit actually. Um,
mhm.
then you've got the ones with the screen in them, so you're looking at around that 350 mark. When it comes to the Alexa devices, they're pretty much on the same scale. Your $350 odd dollars for the 10-inch screen device. I think the 8-inch was under 200. The 5-inch is about 129, and the same with their version of the Echo Mini is called the Echo Dot, and the Dot is around that $50 $60 mark as well.
So some varying prices, some quite affordable products, and some that have dropped in price, but still
Mm.
a few $100s. Now with I guess if there were any listeners out there that were still trying to figure out whether they should make that purchase, what are the pros and cons of buying like a standalone smart TV versus like a Chromecast streaming device
Mm.
like, Apple TV, for example?
Um, well, you reckon Apple TV, I suppose, you're still looking at that $300 to $400 mark. You're looking at a good price for something like an Apple TV. And I suppose they come into their own if you don't have a smart TV, but you want the extra streaming devices. We haven't spoken as yet about uh, the smart TV stream device, the Fire Stick. Sorry,
Oh,
I've
yep.
forgotten what it was.
The
Uh,
Amazon TV Fire Stick, that
mhm,
one?
yep.
Yep.
And the Fire Stick is really it's a bit like a large memory stick for your computer. You plug it into a HDMI port, and it virtually turns your TV into a smart TV because it has all of those other apps that your smart TV has, like Netflix. It also has its own built-in speech system, which is kind of strange because when you first start it up, it has a really ordinary voice, but as you're setting everything up and in the background, it's downloading the really good voice, and all of a sudden that just tends to kick in at some point, 5 or 10 minutes down the track, and you've got this device that you can switch to from your TV to your Fire Stick, and it's really simple. And you're looking at about $70 for something like that. They can start streaming, Netflix and all of the other Stan and whatever else that you might be logged into or you're paying for already. But
Jennifer's asked, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the speech on it is really good, and it speaks, in everything. So it'll read back to you everything that all the programs that are there.
Oh, great, because I was just about to ask a question on behalf
Hmm.
of Jennifer. Says if you can turn on speech on the TV independently. Can you turn on speech on the
Mm,
TV independently? Yeah.
good question.
Yep.
Um, with all of the remote controls, the ones that have the speech button, you literally just hold the button down and say turn on talkback. Or on a Samsung TV, you say the same thing, but it's not talkback. It's something else. But even on the standard Samsungs smart TVs that don't have the talk button, you can. There's a dedicated button that you can press that will take you to the settings menu and to the speech component where it actually just says speech off. You press it. You press the OK button and it says speech on.
So
So yes, you can.
thanks for that. No, there's some questions around where do I go get these products and whatnot. If you head to visionaustralia.org and click on the shop link, that's where you'll be able to find products such as Google Home, I think, and some other devices.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so to all the folks out there inquiring about that, please head to the website for further support and product listings. Now, I want to move on
Just
now. Sorry,
just
go
one
ahead.
thing before we do that. You can also
Go
ask the
ahead.
shop for special orders. So
Oh,
if
okay.
they don't have a particular product, you can ask them to get that product in.
Oh, I love that.
Mm.
That's really cool. Yep. Um, that number is 1300 84 74 66, or head to visionaustralia.org to see more information. I've just had a look at the time, Jim, and I want to get through to some other important
Mm-hmm.
sections today. And that's also around smart switches and bulbs. And we've got some questions that have come through today as well around that. So I will get to them shortly if you are still with us.
Yep.
Firstly, what is a smart switch?
It literally is a switch that just plugs into a power point. So, and its only claim to fame is that it can turn on or off.
Okay.
So it's turning whatever the device could be. It could be lights. It could be, for instance, it could be like something I did the other day. I was using the slow cooker, which doesn't actually have a timer on mine. It only has a low, medium, or high. So using a smart switch, I can actually put something on and go out when you can go out, go out and then automatically turn it off via your phone, so you
Oh,
can
that's
be out
cool.
for a few hours. Yeah, so it's not just lights; it can be literally anything that you can think of, and turn it off. Could be the lights outside. Could have a big Christmas party. Could have a big party, and you got all your lights outside. You can use something like that to turn that on and off.
Oh, I love that. The simplicity of. Does these things make us a bit lazier, I wonder? Don't answer that, because let's use the time to get back to some more questions. We've got Chris. I've just gotten smart light switches for my main lights installed into my house, and I was wondering if there is any worth in using routines/automation.
It's a good question. I suppose the routines and automations come into it when you're not at home, more so, so that it looks like someone's at home. Um, if you're at home, then you're just being able to say turn lights off, on, make 50%, all that sort of stuff. I suppose if you're at home, then that's more practical. Um, but the automation comes into it when you're really not at home.
Okay.
And I guess there's probably situations that I'm not even thinking of where the automation might come in handy, but at the moment I can't think of them.
It could be a bit of that, like once you start using it, that bit of trial and
Mm.
error. Yeah. Michael's asked, I've tried smart plugs. However, I'm keen to replace light switch to rooms. Do you know any good suppliers that are compatible with Alexa?
No.
Oh,
no, no. I mean, with electrical switches and things like that, there are a lot these days where the switch itself is Wi-Fi compatible. So that, in building a new home, for instance, the electrical side of the equation is quite important these days, to talk to the architect and see just what you can do, without having to have all these smart switches, because the smart switch could already be built into the power point, or could be built into the light switch.
Yeah. Um, some good feedback there, and I think this is some important feedback from a listener. I thought it was worth sharing. Not a question, but a statement. But you might want to add on, Jim. I got smart lights that replaced my normal light switches in my house. I did have to get an electrician, and it was mostly covered under my NDIS. So I thought that was quite some interesting feedback there.
If they're
Um,
not capable of doing that, then yeah, the NDIS would probably pay for that.
yeah, that's good to know. Um, moving from. So I understand that Google talks about moving from Galaxy to another phone, transferring data to new phones so that you don't lose anything. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yep, and that's got nothing to do with the actual Google Home devices.
Yeah,
So
separate. Yeah.
that's Google just saying, if you go from, say, for instance, an Android phone to an iPhone, and you want to keep all of your contacts and everything else, the easy way to do that is to actually create a Google account, a Gmail account, so that you can then just back up or sync all of your contacts, um, and some other things as well. So you've got them all backed up. So come to the iPhone, you switched from the Android back to the iPhone. You then create that account, because you've already got the Gmail account. So as soon as you create that account, you can sync all of those contacts back to the iPhone, so that you don't have to put them all back in again. It just makes life so much easier. And you've backed them up. Your phones sometimes die, and you just got to get a new phone. It could be the same model of the new phone, and having all of your contacts lost is
Oh,
pretty tragic sometimes.
oh, it is definitely.
Mm.
Now, Sharon's asked, what about when Wi-Fi is playing up and everything in your house depends on it? Can your entire world shut down for a little bit, or is there? Do you have any experience or advice,
Yep,
Jim?
and that happens, and that's one of the reasons why I don't use my Google devices or Amazon devices as an alarm clock,
Mm,
just in case it goes down at night. Um, I use it for timers and things like that in the kitchen. Yeah, so you can set a timer because you're cooking something, so countdown time for 20 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever. But I tend not to use it for something like that. With all of the smart lights, um, if the Wi-Fi is down, it doesn't matter, because you can still go to the light switch and turn it on or off.
yeah,
So you still got your power there. That part doesn't make any difference. But yep, you can't talk to it. If you try and talk to it, it actually tells you it can't connect to the Wi-Fi. So you're not completely lost. And with a smart TV, it just means that if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can't get onto your Netflix or your Stan or whatever your streaming devices, but you can still use your TV,
hmm
and the speech will still work when it's telling you, what the program is on your free-to-air TV.
that's good to know. I don't know what I'd do right now if my internet failed and I couldn't watch my Netflix, Jim. I'd be
Well, if
struggling.
my internet failed right now, we wouldn't be talking.
Yeah, and it'll be over to me, who would only be talking about my favorite Netflix shows. Now, I'm keen to move on to another area, and I think it will be really useful for people to know about the Ring doorbell with the built-in camera. What is this about, Jim?
I love my Ring doorbell, I must admit. It's one of my great toys.
Okay.
Um, Ring doorbell literally is that. It's a doorbell, but it has a built-in camera in it. So when somebody comes to your door, you can it'll actually start to ring your phone. You get this set of
Mm.
chimes. It'll start to ring your phone as they're walking down the driveway, for instance.
Oh, I like that.
And so you get a warning that somebody's there. They ring the doorbell, and you can literally talk to them through your phone, so you don't have to be at home to talk to them. And you can see them. You can also record them. So you can record that. It's about a 40-second recording, so you get to see the person themselves and see what they're doing. The other day, I was out, and a courier came along, so I just asked him to leave the parcel at the door, and I know that he did. Yes, I've had situations in the past where the post office has told me that something's been delivered, and I've said no, and I can prove it because they never came. Yeah,
Oh wow.
my camera never did it,
Oh
and of
wow.
course they actually delivered it the next day, so which was good. But it's that sort of thing. Yeah, it to some people that can be a security, and if, for instance, you've got one of the Echo devices or one of the Google devices with a screen on it, you can just literally say, Alexa, talk to the front door, and it'll turn the camera on, and you can be sitting in your lounge room looking at your screen and talking to the person if that's what you want.
That's
Um,
so sophisticated.
yeah, it's really quite simple, relatively cheap at about $250 odd. Um, it has a rechargeable. You can have two different versions. You have a rechargeable battery if you want, and literally, I bought a second battery so I can just unplug one and put the other one in when it
Mm.
needs to be changed. But it's really good, and you can get cameras around the house as well. So it doesn't have to be just the doorbell. You can get other Ring cameras um, around, and some of them you can get with alarms on them as well. So if you think something suspicious is happening, you can press a button on your phone, and it'll ring the alarm.
Yeah. That's really really handy. I think we've touched on a little bit of this already. But Rosemary's asked a good questions around. Can you use other communications options other than speech to switch on light, like clap or a switch device for those that cannot speak?
Yes, yes, there are other devices that can do that, and there are specialised companies that to deal with that sort of thing. You can have what they call jelly beans. Basically, it's a large coloured button that you can just press, and that can actually do something in particular. So you can set it up to turn on that light or to turn off the fan or something like that. So yes, there are other devices that can do that.
Cecile has asked, how can I get the Google Home to work with the ducted heating, cooling, and evaporative cooling panels, which is not accessible? Good
You can't.
question.
Yep,
Oh,
it is
you
a good
can't.
question. You can't. The
Yep.
only the problem with that is that it has a wired remote control. Um, if it had an infrared remote control, then yes, you can. But all of those ducted heating systems have a wired remote control, so there's no way for the Google device to send a signal to it. Now, some of the newer ducted heating systems may be Wi-Fi enabled, but the vast majority that are around, you can't.
Got you. And Sharon's asked something to do again with voice support. Can you use smart speakers to read your emails to you?
Yes,
Oh, ace.
um, you can set it up so that you get your messages and only yours. So, for instance, the Google Mini, you can have up to 6 different people connected to it, and you got to teach it your voice, so that if one of the kids comes up and says, what's my email, it's not going to read your emails.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and
Important distinction.
the Echo device only has 2 people that it can have, not
Okay.
6.
I sometimes wonder, like, knowing that you've spent 25 years at Vision Australia and this is your greatest love, I wonder, like, what your home would feel and look like. Like, so you've got what are all the technologies if someone was to go into your place that you utilize that that has really supported your lifestyle? We've got the donut,
Yeah,
obviously, my favorite
well,
because it's
it's it's interesting because it's not really that much, but then again,
okay.
I probably don't consider a lot of stuff, technology. It's just stuff I use.
Yeah, sure.
And yes, I have a number of Amazon Echo devices, Alexa devices, and a number of the Google devices, 2 smart TVs. I've got screen reading programs and screen enlargement programs on my computer. I've got some lots and lots of apps on my phone. Some apps that will I can just take a photo of a document and it'll read it to me. Things like that that are these days just absolute second nature, that I really don't even think about. And it's really interesting when you consider that it's only about 11 years ago that the first iPhone was released. That first real smartphone was released. Before that, we had a lot of Nokias, and there was a speech program for that, which is fantastic. But really, all of that technology has come in the last few years. And even only a few years ago, you'd never consider walking into your house and start talking to some object just sitting there. That was sort of Star Trek stuff, where you'd walk into a room and tell it to do all sorts of things.
So true.
And yes, they're a lot of fun, but to some people they are so important because it is hard to get out of that wheelchair. It's hard to walk around, and you need that convenience of being able to turn something on, to turn something off, and just the practicalities of a lot of that sort of stuff these days. Yes, it's fun. It really can, because both the Echo devices and the Google devices, you can actually play games with them.
Yeah, right.
You can ask it to play a game. You can ask it to tell you a joke. Nobody wants to start singing happy birthday at a birthday party, so you can get the Google device to do it for you. And in fact, these days, when you're supposed to be washing your hands for 20 seconds, you can actually ask Alexa to sing a 20-second song.
Oh, wow.
It's all about washing your hands too.
Oh, wow.
And it goes for exactly 20 seconds.
That's amazing. I feel like Alexa can do so much. Who needs a boyfriend? I just need an Alexa to talk to. You did mention something about just now around COVID-19, which I thought was important, which was interesting, and that's reminded me to see if you had any feedback to Sandra's question, and that's what type of smart devices can be purchased with NDIS funding around the temporary like COVID-19 arrangements until September. Are you aware of any kind of I guess, additional funding support during this challenging period, Jim?
It's one of those awkward questions where they're a little bit more lax at the moment, but you still got to be. It still basically needs to be in your plan. It basically needs to be. You still have to justify it. I guess you can't just go out and say, "I want this," because it's COVID. Because it might have nothing to do with COVID. So it is one of those awkward questions. We do have, originally the NDIS put out a thing on their webpage that made everyone go, yay, I can get this and I can get that. And they took that down about 3 or 4 days later and said, we're working on something a little bit more
realistic.
Yeah, so yes, if you're self-managed, I guess you can. You might be looking at different things if you've got the budget there. If, at any case, I would always check with your plan manager or your local area coordinator.
I think that's really important because what you're saying, Jim, is that in order to know, what your rights are and what can be funded, it is that incredibly tailored. So just so if any of our clients are listening, if anyone isn't a client and listening, this is still very applicable to you. Vision Australia, we're offering services via telehealth, and that's being done through phone, video conferencing, email, or a combo, depending on your needs. And give us a call at 1300 84 74 66 so that we can actually figure out how to get you the support that you need during just a different way. We're just doing it virtually, given this particular scenario. We've just got a few more questions. There's a lot more, and I want to thank you everyone for your patience and understanding as I've tried to do my best to put. I've been trying to put Jim throw him under the bus as much as I can, but his 25 years of experience is pretty strong, mate. You're doing so well. So I think we just got a couple more questions. I've asked all the questions that I wanted to today, and that's why I want to get through this as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
With the doorbell, we've got a question that's come through. What's the battery life like?
I guess that sort of depends on how much you use it. I get around 6 weeks out of it before I have to change, but you do get a prompt on your phone to tell you when to do it. And if you leave it, then eventually you just won't be able to connect to the doorbell.
Sure.
But yeah, for me, I get probably 6 weeks out of it. I guess the first time you get your doorbell, you play with it a lot and you look at the screen a lot. So every time you turn the camera on, you're using the battery. But you can see what's out there without somebody walking to the door. So. Have a look at your garden if that's what you wanted to do, that sort of thing. But to me, the first time I actually got it the first time around, I probably only had 3 or 4 weeks out of the battery. But then after that, 6 weeks would be fairly common.
And what's the technical term for the doorbell? The actual
well, there are different brands. The one that I have is Ring, R-I-N-G.
Okay. But I think the best thing to do to the folks that are wanting to get some more specifics around the name, best thing to do is to head to visionaustralia.org and click on our retail store to get an idea of the full product names and listings, or just save the time. I love speaking to someone, and you can call the AT help desk on 1300 84 74 66. We've actually come to an end to our webinar. I think a lot of our listeners, Jim, have benefited greatly from your advice if the questions that have come through is any indication. Just to summarize some of the key touch points for our listeners. So again, we're offering telehealth virtually through phone, video conferencing, email, or a combo. Final plug is that number 1300 84 74 66 or email info@visionaustralia.org. The next check-in and chat session is about fostering family learning at home. It's on Tuesday, the 26th of May at 11 a.m. for the folks residing in New South Wales, Vic, Queensland, Tas, and 10:30 a.m. for folks in South Australia and Northern Territory. In Western Australia, it's a 9 a.m. start. The panel will include a paediatric expert, as well as Jen, who's a speech pathologist, and Heather Fair, an occupational therapist. Jim, I have loved talking with you today, and to all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I always love doing these sessions, and I hope that everybody that's out there got something out of it.
I think they have. I certainly do. And thank you for all the encouraging words that have come through and towards you, Jim. That's been fantastic. Everyone, we've loved chatting with you today. Bye for now.
Bye.
Vision Australia.
Blindness,
low vision,
opportunity.
Vision Australia logo. 3 navy blue ovals linked together diagonally within a bright yellow rectangle.